The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. Well, I've had some time to reflect on the brutal political assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk. I was honored to call Kirk a friend. I spoke at virtually all of his campus tours, his big events, such as the ones in Palm Beach and Detroit, Phoenix. Charlie Kirk was a very open, public and private advocate for clemency for me. That's right, a full, unconditional presidential pardon when I was charged and framed in the Russian collusion hoax. This was prior to a federal judge ordering the Justice Department to finally release the fully unredacted final report of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, which proved that they had found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part. This was at a time when other stupid Republicans and all Democrats were saying stuff like, well, let Mueller do his job, not recognizing that there was no probable cause to even engender his investigation, since there was, as we definitively now know, thanks to the declassified documents put out by the Director of Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, no Russian collusion. This past Wednesday, the MAGA movement lost one of its most influential and admirable leaders, the happy warrior Charlie Kirk, in founding Turning Point USA and turning the organization into a national juggernaut. Charlie Kirk did more to convert young minds to the cause of freedom than anyone of his era. My good friend and someone I am a huge fan of, Tom McDonald, recorded a terrific tribute song. We're going to play it right now.
Shot down and he was barely 31. Another woke coward took a life with a gun. He left behind a wife and a daughter and a son. All he did was try to speak for all of us. And I'm so tired of the hatred and the narratives. The patriots ain't dangerous, woke people are the terrorists. They shot and killed the father, sent a message to Americans. They ain't gonna stop until they bury us. Dear Charlie, I don't know if you can see us now, but if heaven has a window, I sure hope you're looking down. Cause we ain't going quiet, we gon' scream your name loud. And you're gone, but I swear to God that we gon' make you proud. We ain't backing off or giving up, I'll preach what you taught me. They may have killed a soldier, but that man had an army. This is far more deep than some political parties. And you can't kill freedom, so this one is for Charlie. This ain't the America that all our parents love, but good men try to keep making it great. Pray that God will take care of us, the system is failing us, but good men die for the things that they say. And I can't just be quiet, so I gotta be brave, cause this is America. Lately it's scaring us, but one good man can change it all in a day. Killed in cold blood for having a discussion, and liberals are celebrating murder like it's justice. You didn't kill a villain or the evil that it comes with. You killed a father and a husband. And I'm so tired of the left and all the wokery. We can't get along if you just kill us when we don't agree. Sniper rifle fire from a liberal that no one sees. Scared I might be next to die when I'm just buying groceries. Charlie, we'll make sure your children know that defending all our freedom is why you aren't coming home. I hope heaven has a window you can watch your children grow and hear your message echo from below. And we ain't backing off or giving up, I'll preach what you taught me. They may have killed a soldier, but that man had an army. This is far more deep than some political parties. And you can't kill freedom, so this one is for Charlie. This ain't the America that all our parents love, but good men try to keep making it great. Pray that God will take care of us, the system is failing us, but good men die for the things that they say. And I can't just be quiet, so I gotta be brave, cause this is America. Lately it's scaring us, but one good man can change it all in a day.
Charlie Kirk was assassinated in broad daylight during an open discussion event at Utah Valley University. He regularly did these campus tours, going into the belly of the beast to dispel myths and address concerns from students who were being aggressively indoctrinated by Marxist professors and organizers. Charlie Kirk was an exemplar of freedom of speech, understanding that rights fade when they are not boldly exercised. And for that very reason, well, he's no longer with us today. Even now, as we speak, around the world, around the country, but also around the world, there are vigils and marches in his memory. Right now, Even as we speak, thousands of people have gathered in his home birthplace of Arlington Heights, Illinois, right outside of Chicago, in remembrance of Charlie Kirk. He will truly be remembered among the greatest patriots this nation has ever known. I really hope that President Donald Trump will decide to award posthumously Charlie Kirk with the Medal of Freedom. I think that he deserves it. The anger and disenfranchisement being experienced among conservatives is ubiquitous and is aided by the cavalier and even celebratory responses from many on the left. It's disgusting. It's repugnant. Some, like California Governor Gavin Newsom, have offered their perfunctory and, I think, disingenuous condolences, but many are not hiding their true feelings of joy. There are people who are actually ecstatic that Charlie Kirk, who I think was a moderate in terms of his rhetoric, someone who listened to all points of view, they're happy that he's dead and hope that others who share his ideology join him sooner rather than later. Those who refer to the individuals who assassinated Charlie Kirk and cheer the behavior on as radical leftists are sorely misguided. To refer them as radical implies that there's some kind of fringe movement. Well, that is not the case. This is exactly who they are. This is the core of the movement, the new normal among Democrats who have gotten high on their own supply. They bought their own propaganda about President Donald Trump so thoroughly that they now believe that anyone to the right of Karl Marx is a threat who must be eliminated. Nazis, fascists, bigots, white supremacists. This is what they call us. And this is what has engendered this atmosphere of danger. When the Democrats claim that President Trump and all of his supporters are Nazis or fascists, they're not only implying that it's permissible, but actually laudable to use violence to neutralize us as threats. When they boast about making racists afraid or punching a Nazi, they don't mean the buffoon wearing the Ku Klux Klan robe or the morbidly obese Hitler enthusiast goose-stepping in the street. These are deadly serious threats about their intentions to impose violence upon Christians or anyone who has traditional patriotic views or values, the sort which the overwhelming majority of Americans have had since the founding of the country. See, their ideology is breaking down the social order from pillar to post, targeting religion, gender, the market, the rule of law, the nuclear family, and so on. The left has been wildly successful in their aims. Faith in God has waned considerably in recent years, with LGBT becoming the new national religion, as toddlers are encouraged to exercise gender creativity. Their intent is to decay the family unit with the rise of single-parent households subsidized by the federal government, and careerism being represented as the highest goal. Yet, in recent days, we've seen a rise in those young people declaring their devotion to Jesus Christ. We've seen record numbers of people joining the Catholic Church around the globe. So it's not working. God operates on the basis of a plan, but I learned a long time ago that God does not reveal his entire plan to you until he's ready for you to know it. And therefore, in this horrific tragedy, we must recognize that God has a purpose, and that purpose will be revealed to us. I was moved by the comments of Charlie's wife, Erica, the other night. It must have taken extraordinary personal strength to get through that without breaking down. I often thought what it would be like for my wife, my daughter, my family, if I were unfairly incarcerated. There's little doubt the intention of the Mueller witch hunt and the Obama-Biden leftovers in the Justice Department was for me to die in a dank federal prison. 68 years old with a lifetime history of asthma, why would they send me to a prison so far from my home? Why would they lie and claim that there were no known cases of asthma in the Georgia prison that they sentenced me to? No, the idea was very clear. I was supposed to die. That would mean that I could not seek an appeal, that I couldn't raise money for appeal. And why did the judge gag me? It was bad enough that 29 heavily armed FBI agents showed up at my home at 6 o'clock in the morning to storm my house to take me into custody for the first time, nonviolent crime of allegedly lying to Congress. But I could have died on that day. I thank the Lord Jesus that I did not. Until President came down the golden escalator, the public was demoralized and conditioned full-heartedly to accept that they were merely be spectators and not the victims of the drama to come. As the Russian White Army commander Piotr Wrangel eloquently wrote in his memoirs, Always with Honor, President Trump's rise galvanized the forgotten men and women of America that were dubbed the silent majority by my mentor, Richard Nixon, and gave them the means to fight back. Not to take rights away from women or minorities, go back to the 1950s as the crude caricature of what we believe that the left infers, but just to allow the common people of this country be able to live their lives away from the cavalcade of degeneracy that is so close to devouring us all today. With Charlie Kirk's murder, we're forced to come back to the stark realization that we'll never be able to turn the dial back. The comforting libertarian fantasy that we can live our lives in a bubble, isolated from cultural factors, is a ruse. The ephemeral notion of America that we have loved and held dear is a phantom. And now we're locked into a war for our very civilization, one that we cannot turn away and hide from. Charlie Kirk was not an extremist. He was always polite. He was never overly abrasive or offensive. He did not wish to impose his beliefs on others through coercion. Charlie Kirk believed, as I do, perhaps earnestly and naively, that conservatives could win the debate. But the left has set the terms of the battlefield, and the free exchange of ideas is not part of their plan. Thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show. Later on, we're going to be turning on the phones at 800-848-9222 to take your calls. That's 800-848-9222. Or you can email us your questions at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. That's askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. But whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show. We're talking about my friend Charlie Kirk. The FBI now tells us that 22-year-old Tyler Robinson was the assassin who killed Charlie Kirk with one bullet last Wednesday. As someone who wrote a New York Times best-selling book on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, took that book to 6 publishers. They all told me that it had no commercial appeal, that no one would ever read it. Within 2 weeks of it ultimately being published, it became a New York Times bestseller. As someone who has just finished writing a book on the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan, that book that will publish around this Christmas, as someone who has studied very carefully the 2 assassination attempts on President Donald Trump, and who still has many, many, many questions unanswered about those 2 incidents, I take the same view here, one of refusing to rush to judgment. Going through the annals of time, we see there are usually additional details that the government likes to leave out, of course, for our own safety and well-being when these high-profile political assassinations occur. That appears to be the case here. The alleged killer, a young, allegedly radical leftist, Tyler Robinson, said to have acted alone. But it's not clear if he was the assassin, and if it was, is it possible that he was just a cog in a greater conspiracy that wanted to see Kirk offed? Let's examine some of the irregularities and abnormalities surrounding the assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk. The bolt rifle action rifle allegedly used in the shooting was found in the woods fully assembled after the killer made his getaway. Yet in the CCTV footage, the killer can be shown jumping off of the rooftop with his rifle apparently disassembled. So then he reassembled the rifle and left it in the woods for law enforcement to find while making his getaway? He also decided to change the clothes immediately after the shooting, which makes sense as those clothes would tie him to the scene. But then later on, he put on the exact same clothes before he was apprehended. I watched Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who's a never Trumper Republican, try to explain that on TV. The FBI stated that the killer presented all the details wrapped in a bow, just like the murder weapon, bragging about how he committed the crime on the chat platform of Discord. popular among young people. A spokesman from Discord said that they have identified a Discord account associated with the suspect, but they found no evidence the suspect planned this incident or promoted violence on Discord. And they also said communications were between the suspect's roommate and a friend after the shooting, where the roommate was recounting the contents of a note that the suspect had left elsewhere. None of this adds up. However, once again, Utah Governor Spencer Cox claimed that the FBI took images of the incriminating communications between Robbins and his roommate over Discord, taking screenshots of the conversation. So, who's lying? Immediately following the assassination, the FBI conspicuously failed to lock down the airspace surrounding the Provo airport, which is only a 10-minute drive from Utah, where allegedly a private jet left the airport around 2 p.m. before disappearing for radar. That means they turned off their tracking technology. At a recent talk, the journalist Megyn Kelly, Kirk talked about Epstein's possible connections to foreign powers. There was also a report Kirk had received a great deal of flack over his ambiguous position on whether or not we should engage in Iran. So I have many, many questions. We'll talk about more when we come back. We're also going to be taking your calls at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. We'll start taking your calls in the next hour, or you can go to Ask Stone at RogerStoneShow.com and email us your questions. We'll be right back.
About a shirtless man.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Paquetes Expedia. Vives para disfrutar de la música con todos tus sentidos. Vivimos para brindarte paquetes de viaje y experiencias por menos. Expedia. Vivimos para viajar.
This is your before and after story, where your first steps towards a new life-changing career begin. Southeastern College can take you there. We offer in-demand hybrid and online programs with hands-on training, led by in-field career professionals, and career services to put you on the path to a rewarding and fulfilling future. This is where your transformation begins. Southeastern College. Your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show. Before the break, we were talking about the many anomalies surrounding the political assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk. Yesterday came reports that his roommate was transgendered. Now, earlier there were reports carried by the Wall Street Journal that the bullet casings had transgendered slogans or comments etched on them. That turns out, like much that is reported by the Wall Street Journal, to be untrue. There were some in the audience very close to Kirk who seemed to be making peculiar hand gestures and body movements in the moments before Kirk was shot. Could some of these men have known about what was about to take place? It does appear that many transgender activists did. At least 8 people have been proven to have been bragging in social media about Kirk's assassination before it took place. FBI Director Kash Patel reportedly was incensed at his underlings at the Bureau when they waited 12 hours to show him a photo of the suspected killer, according to multiple sources. So if FBI agents were keeping Patel in the dark about these crucial details, what else could they be keeping from the director? Also, the FBI has not recovered the bullet from the Kirk shooting. Only the brass casings from the bullet were removed from the scene. When asked whether the bullet had been recovered and matched to the rifle, Governor Cox could not give a definitive answer, only saying that he believes that information was being processed by the FBI headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. He sounds very uncertain. The bullet casings allegedly found the shooter contained anti-fascist message, however, playing into the narrative that the shooter was a radicalized leftist. This, of course, is not out of the realm of possibility, considering the nature of the modern psychotic leftists. But the lack of a bullet being found and no answers being given as to why this is the case raises considerable suspicions about, well, the government's story. And then what about George Zinn, the leftist provocateur in The Guardians, who caused a diversion and then was detained at the perfect moment to give the shooter an opportunity to perform a getaway, to stage their getaway. Zinn, surprisingly, was also a witness to the September 11 attacks and was arrested in 2013 for making a false bomb threat during the Salt Lake City Marathon and shortly before the Boston Marathon bombing. This dubious character being planted at the scene is even more circumstantial evidence that there's far more going on here than meets the eye when it comes to this particular case. Additionally, it was revealed last night that a neighbor reported that about 2 weeks before Kirk's assassination, several shady characters driving cars with out-of-state license plates were frequently coming and going from the $1,800 a month townhouse that the alleged assassin shared with a transgender roommate, stating that these individuals did not give off a good vibe. So the lone nut theory is not going to suffice in this case either. There are too many questions about the official story that we need answers to. FBI Director Kash Patel was put into his role to clean up the deep state, and that must start now. We can't speculate about Kirk's murder for decades, as we have other prominent assassinations. We do need to get to the bottom of this, and now. Too many odd anomalies. For example, on September 9th, Amazon offers a book for sale by an author, Anastasia J. Casey, entitled The Shooting of Charlie Kirk. The community notes on X are not helpful in this regard, accurately pointing out that your release date and your publication date are not necessarily the same, but either whether this was a release date or a publication date, it preceded the day on which Charlie Kirk was shot. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times both ran a headline on the 9th, simply saying Charlie Kirk, 31, shot at Utah College campus. How do they explain that? Unfortunately, assassinations have been a rigid piece of our political history. President Abraham Lincoln, of course, was assassinated at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. by an actor and Confederate sympathizer and John Wilkes Booth. Now, while Booth is often shoehorned into the lone nut narrative that the government always pushes after the shootings of prominent people, he was actually part of a much broader conspiracy. Booth sent his accomplice, Lewis Powell, to assassinate Secretary of State William H. Seward. Seward actually was stabbed in the face and neck, although he survived. Booth's accomplice, George Asterzot, was sent to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson, but he lost his nerve at the last minute. President James A. Garfield was killed by Charles Guiteau, a disgruntled attorney who believed he was owed a cabinet position. Poor medical care administered to President Garfield also contributed to his death, which occurred 2 months after he was shot. Then, of course, there was the assassination of William McKinley, which is glossed over because the murderer, Leon Kohlhaas, was a far-left anarchist immigrant. Kohlhaas stated that he assassinated President McKinley in a Buffalo railroad station because of his administration's support for capitalist economics. At the time, leftist anarchists had been murdering government leaders throughout Europe with increased frequencies, which connected the assassination to a broader conspiracy. The death of McKinley, of course, brought former New York City Police Commissioner, former New York Governor Theodore Roosevelt, the vice president, to the presidency. Roosevelt had been placed on the ticket with McKinley to get him out of New York because Roosevelt objected to the spoils systems of the stalwart wing of the Republican Party, who saw the opportunities for graft in the New York Park to be too rich to pass up. So, as they called him, that damn cowboy was put on the ticket by Republican boss Marcus Hanna as a way to get him out of the New York governorship into a nice, safe place where he could do no damage. He, of course, went on to be one of our greatest presidents. Little known fact, Roosevelt bolted the Republican Party and causing a two-way split, launching the Bull Moose Progressive Party, costing his hand-picked successor, William Howard Taft, the presidency, and electing perhaps our worst president, Woodrow Wilson, a virulent segregationist who also brought the Federal Reserve into being. But after that, Roosevelt switched back to the Republican Party, and he was actually the front runner for the Republican nomination in 1912 when he died of a stroke. President John F. Kennedy's assassination has been the most speculated of assassination in history, one I have personally written a book on, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Obviously, JFK was not killed by the magic bullet, as the official government story says. It's actually theoretically impossible. Many believe that Kennedy was killed by the CIA or the Federal Reserve or the Mafia or the military-industrial complex or some combination of the above. When considering assassination theories, I think we must first ask ourselves, as they say in Latin, cui bono, who benefits? Nobody benefited more from Kennedy's demise than his own Vice President, Lyndon Johnson. And then, of course, there are the many similarities between the assassinations of both Lincoln and Kennedy. Both Lincoln and Kennedy were elected to Congress, Lincoln in 1846, Kennedy in 1946. Both interesting that Lincoln's personal secretary was named Kennedy and Kennedy's personal secretary was named Lincoln. These are strange anomalies. Abraham Lincoln came to the presidency in 1860. John Kennedy came to the presidency in 1960. Lincoln was assassinated on Good Friday, April 14th at Ford's Theater with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, with him. Kennedy was, of course, assassinated on November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas with his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, by his side. Lincoln's successor was named Johnson, a Southerner, whereas Kennedy's successor was also named Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, another Southerner. Andrew Johnson from Tennessee was born on December 29th, 1808, while Lyndon Johnson was born on August 27th, 1908, the same day as, well, yours truly. Both assassins had three last names, John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald. Booth was born in 1839. Oswald was born in 1939. Interesting. All of these, of course, are anomalies. These have bounced around the internet for a long time. Martin Luther King, of course, was killed in 1968, allegedly, by rifleman James Earl Ray, who was arrested and pled guilty before later recanting and saying he was not the killer. During the trial, Ray objected after his defense attorneys claimed he had acted alone. There was no conspiracy. Martin Luther King Jr.'s son, Martin Luther King III, believed that the gun allegedly used by Ray to assassinate his father had been planted. It is well known that the FBI was surveilling Martin Luther King for years. A wiretap asked and requested by J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, but approved by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. It's well known that the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, long suspected Dr. King of communist sympathies, something that was never proven. They certainly had a long-standing grudge and motive to off him, so the civil rights movement could be more easily controlled and manipulated. It was probably, however, King's opposition to the Vietnam War that sealed his doom. You see, J. Edgar Hoover had a wiretap on Dr. Martin Luther King. This is established. And in that wiretap, they learned two things. One, that it was Dr. King's intention to endorse Robert F. Kennedy Sr. for the Democratic nomination. Days later, Kennedy, running in the 1968 Democrat primary in California, speaking to a student audience for the first time ever, said, rather than just accept the conclusions of the Warren Commission, Bobby Kennedy said that he would reopen the investigation into the assassination of his brother, John F. Kennedy. Within weeks, both Dr. King and Robert F. Kennedy were killed. Robert Kennedy was killed just 2 months after the death of Dr. King. He was allegedly killed by Sirhan Sirhan, a Palestinian extremist who allegedly assassinated RFK because of support for Israel. However, there's a problem with that because Sirhan Sirhan was always in front of RFK, getting off 8 bullets, none of which hit Robert F. Kennedy. The medical examiner for Los Angeles, who was widely respected, said that RFK died from 3 point-blank shots from the rear left of his skull, meaning it would be impossible for Sirhan to be the shooter. Sirhan's gun would only allow 8 shots to be fired. Then there's the strange question of the woman in the polka dot dress who ran out of the room and out of the front of the hotel saying, "We got him, we got him." The government actually knows who that woman is. She still lives in California, yet she has not been questioned. So all of these anomalies remind me of the current situation. In my upcoming book on Ronald Reagan's attempted assassination, again, John Hinckley Jr. always crouching in front of Reagan, getting off, well, it depends on who you believe. Since all the federal documents are largely redacted, he either got off 6 or 8 shots. But what we do know is that Reagan was hit from above and behind. I know this because I interviewed doctors at George Washington University Hospital, and I interviewed 2 Secret Service agents who are still with us today. So once again, more anomalies regarding the assassinations of our leaders, which is why I am not prepared to rush to judgment on the lone nut narrative surrounding the murder of my good friend Charlie Kirk. When we come back, we're going to go to the phones. That number again, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. It's Roger Stone on the phone, coming right up. Also, you can go to askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. That's askstone@rogerstoneshow.com, and send us your questions that way. We're going to be answering your questions on the other side. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Back on the Roger Stone Show. Again, we're going to be taking your questions at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. Or you can go to askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. That's askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. Here is a question from Edna, who is in New Canaan, Connecticut. She says, "I often see you talking about New Haven-style pizza. Could you illuminate?" Well, I am, of course, a Connecticut native. New Haven-style pizza, often called abitz, in a nod to its Nebuladon roots and the dialect of early Italian immigrants, is a thin crust style of pizza hailing from New Haven, Connecticut, that has earned that city the nickname Pizza Capital of the United States. It's very distinct from New York or Chicago pizza due to our obsessive focus on simplicity, texture, and the signature char from coal-fired ovens. So think chewy, crispy edge crust that's not burnt but boldly flavored. It's ultra thin, usually oblong, not always round, hand stretched from high hydration dough made with sturdy bread flour. It's baked in a blazing hot coal oven, somewhere between 650 and 800 degrees for a quick, uneven cook that yields kind of a chewy center, blistered edges, and those coveted dark smoky char spots for extra crunch and a depth of flavor. As to the sauce and the cheese, well, it's minimalist at heart, a light layer of crushed San Marzano tomatoes, very likely seasoned, no heavy cooking there, topped sparingly with whole milk, low moisture mozzarella, or what we call mozz, although that's actually optional, and a generous sprinkle of Pecorino Romano cheese for a little tang. Olive oil drizzles it all together, keeping all things bright and not overly gooey. When it comes to toppings, well, I like to keep it simple and let the crust shine. Classics include the famous tomato pie. That's just sauce and cheese, or a little grated cheese, or, of course, sausage with a little fennel and garlic. The real star, of course, is the white clam pie. This is indigenous to Connecticut. This was invented by Frank Pepe. It includes fresh linolette clams, garlic, oregano, grated cheese, and olive oil. Some people add bacon. I prefer not to. It has no red sauce, but it's briny, garlicky, and trust me, it is absolutely addictive. So the overall vibe of New Haven-style pizza, it's not saucy or loaded. It's about balance in that dry, intense heat from the coal that amps up the natural flavors. It slices fold like a New York pie, but snap with a little more char and a little less flop. It was originated in the 1920s, as I have read, by Italian immigrants who brought it first to New Haven, later to New York. Some very famous places still exist. They've begun to be franchised across the country. So in 2024, a U.S. Congresswoman even declared New Haven's pizza is the nation's best in the congressional record. If you're chasing authenticity, go to Worcester Street in New Haven, Connecticut. It's as close to pizza nirvana as you're ever going to get. Here is another online question before we go to the phones. We'll take a quick break. But someone says, I see you refer to your dog as Pee-wee 2.0. What happened to Pee-wee 1.0? Well, thank you for your question. Mrs. Stone and I are dog lovers. Pee-wee 1.0, who was our first dog, a Yorkshire Terrier, was tragically hit and killed by a hit-and-run driver the day we left Washington, D.C. to move to Florida. He was succeeded by a long succession of Yorkshire Terriers. There was Max and Sammy and Buster. Max and Sammy were brother and sister. Buster was from a different litter. He was a roly-poly fella. Then there was Lily. Then all Yorkshire Terriers. Then we adopted Oscar. Oscar was a Wheaton Terrier who Mrs. Stone found on the side of the road. He'd been hit by a car, badly injured. We ultimately had to amputate his right front leg, but for many years afterwards, he got along extraordinarily well without it. And of course, today, Pee-wee 2.0, along with his sister, Mimi, again, both from the same litter. They are with us still. And I think it was Harry Truman who said, if you're looking for loyalty, get yourself a dog. I heartily agree with that. We are dog lovers. They will love you unconditionally. They become part of your family. The only one warning is that when they do pass, it will be like a member of your family passed. If not, well, then you're not human. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show. We'll be right back to start delving into more of your questions.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Leading a business today means constantly adapting. On the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS, global leaders share how they're making tough calls, testing bold ideas, and putting innovation into practice, generative AI included. If you're looking for real stories behind what's working, this is it. Subscribe to the Executive Insights podcast today, available now on all major podcast platforms.
Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right, we're back in the Roger Stone Show. We're going to go to the phones now. Dee Dee in Westchester County. Dee Dee, you've been holding. You have a question for us.
Good afternoon, Roger. Thank you for taking my question. Do you believe the current investigation around Charlie Kirk's assassination will lead to concrete findings, or will it ultimately prove to be another dead-end inquiry like the Butler investigation?
Excellent question, Dee Dee. I appreciate it. I am deeply concerned that once again, all the pieces that we've been presented so far just don't seem to add up. How does the alleged killer change out of the clothes that he allegedly shot Kirk in and then change back into the original set of clothes only to be arrested? Who is he talking to on Discord, specifically about hiding the rifle? That would indicate that he has Confederates, co-conspirators. Today comes news that on Discord he was actually, prior to his arrest, he was joking with whoever he was talking to, claiming that whoever did shoot Kirk was his doppelganger, meaning someone who looked like him. Very, very strange. His friends say, according to the New York Post, Tyler killed Charlie. Another one suggested that they might claim the FBI's $100,000 reward. All of this joking on a gaming app is deeply troubling to me because it indicates to me that others knew about this. We're not really clear about what, if anything, was really etched on the bullet casings. They can't tell us whether they have the actual bullet. Then I got this email from a veteran who was a sharpshooter for our military services, and he says, I'm not going to tell you his name, I'm no Chris Kyle, but I'm extremely well versed in special operations, served as a sharpshooter for the, a branch of our military service. He says, I'm 100% positive that the attempt on President Trump's life and the successful attempt on Charlie Kirk are connected by the same instructor. I feel that law enforcement is looking in the wrong direction because there's a limited number of trained professionals who teach advanced marksmanship in the United States. Personally, I feel that both incidents resulted in aiming for the left or right carotid artery or jugular, which are both connected, or should I say protected, by the carotid sheath muscle. By puncturing either side, even with direct pressure applied, lifespan is then 3 minutes at the very best. Someone is teaching surgical neck shots. I obviously don't know, and I'm not going to speculate, other than to say I think we're still lacking a number of the facts. I will say this, though. I agree with those who say that it is time for President Trump to declare Antifa to be a terrorist organization, and it is definitely time to start cutting off U.S. taxpayer dollars to all of these nonprofits that have radical purposes to proselytize against other Americans. I think that Charlie Kirk's murder is a direct result of people like him and me and others being called Nazis, fascists, white supremacists, bigots. We are none of those things. We deny all those things. We are not white nationalists either. Well, we're white, some of us, and we're nationalists, meaning we love our country, but I don't see that as subversive. But the idea that Charlie Kirk brought this upon himself because of his divisive rhetoric means whoever's saying that doesn't read what Charlie Kirk has been saying and what he practiced. Charlie Kirk infused advocacy of capitalism, free enterprise, free speech, and the U.S. Constitution with an abiding faith in Jesus Christ and with a spiritual message. Only by fusing the two did his movement have the kind of power that it has. This is why I think that this is a demarcation line, turning point. How ironic that he named his organization Turning Point. He was a good personal friend of mine. I spoke at most of his large conferences. He was, as I said earlier in the show, a major advocate for clemency for me when the deep state and those who cooked up the Russian collusion hoax decided to pressure me. When they could come up with no evidence of Russian collusion, they decided to pressure me into trying to get me to bear false witness against Donald Trump, getting me to swear under oath that he had, or his campaign had, in some way been involved with Russian intelligence in an effort to tip the 2016 election. I, of course, refused to do that. So I do think we need to cut off tax dollars to those who advocate hate and divisiveness and who I think drove this narrative. Didi, thank you so much for your question. Let's go to Patrick. Patrick says he's calling from France. Patrick, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I thought you were right on point with the issues with the Cuban funding all these illegal activities, and I expected President Trump, being close to you, would take real action, and instead he seemed to extend a trade agreement with Cuba, and you commented, hey, this may be counter to what's best. I felt the same way, and so I wondered how you feel about that. I think it's a real problem to leave these issues that you posted about unaddressed.
I appreciate your question. I also appreciate your reading that reporting. By the way, I have a lot more coming. The bottom line of it is very simple. I think in Miami-Dade, Florida, there's a cottage industry of political figures who have lived very high on the notion that they are critics of the brutal Cuban regime, but when Carlos Jimenez, who was the chairman of the Maritime Security Subcommittee of the House Transportation Committee, had the head of Crowley, a major defense contractor, in front of his committee for questioning, he asked him extensively about China, but he never asked him about Cuba, despite the fact that Crowley has a contract that has them sending ships in and out of Cuba's biggest port, which raises very serious national security concerns in terms of being able to plant things on that boat or to otherwise use it to gather intelligence on the United States. I went further to say that Cuban intelligence has planted a number of what I believe are intelligence assets at Florida International University. I name names in my piece. And Carlos Jimenez, the congressman, along with his sidekick Mario Diaz-Balart, another guy who's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars based on his anti-Cuban regime advocacy, continue to get huge, massive federal grants for FIU, but have never done anything about the Cuban spies amongst us. Now, only since I began talking about this and publishing about it has Congressman Carlos Jimenez started to talk about Cuban intelligence assets in the United States. But the people he's talking about tend to be very low level, former police officers, and so on. I'm going to be naming names in the coming weeks. I think there's some major intelligence assets in this country who should be deported or who should more precisely be arrested. I am disappointed that the administration seems more focused on Venezuela than they are about Cuba. I also uncovered, as you may have seen, an audio or a video of Carlos Jimenez saying that in 2016 he was not support Donald Trump, that he did not want Donald Trump to be president, and that he was supporting Hillary Clinton. I think he thought that all copies of that video had been confiscated, but I found it, I put it up on X because it tells you who Congressman Carlos Jimenez really was. Thank you very much for your question. Appreciate it, Patrick. Here is a question from Sal in Queens. Sal said, I understand you have revived the Italian American Civil Rights League. Tell me about it and where can I join? The Italian American Civil Rights League can be found at IACRL.org. IACRL.org. It's the Italian American Civil Rights League. It is a non-profit organization. We have everybody involved is a volunteer. We have no overhead, no consultants, no paid officers. Everyone is a volunteer. Our purpose is to preserve Italian American heritage, customs, and traditions. Italian Americans helped build this country into being the great country that it is, yet people like Zoran Mamdani want to erase us as if we never existed. They specifically want to erase Christopher Columbus. He's already announced his intention to take down the statue of Columbus in New York City. It's bad enough that they've taken the statue of Frank Rizzo, one of the greatest mayors in Philadelphia history, and they put that into mothballs in Philadelphia. They want to do away entirely with our culture. So, yes, the Italian American Civil Rights League was originally founded by Joe Colombo. Fortunately, one of his relatives, Chris Colombo, still had it on the shelf. We were able to transfer it to New Jersey, where it is a registered nonprofit with the IRS. We are completely charitable. We don't obviously endorse candidates. Most recently, we gave awards for outstanding citizenship to the actor Robert Davi, the actor entertainer Joe Piscopo, the actress Dre DiMatteo, also President Donald Trump's longtime pollster Tony Fabrizio, and others. If you're interested, once again, you can go to IACRL.org, IACRL.org. That's the Italian American Civil Rights League. It's very inexpensive. We have various levels of sponsorship and membership. We just do charitable work. And once again, this is an all-volunteer operation. There is no overhead. Nobody's making money off of this. Every penny that you pay for your membership goes to the program and to preserving our Italian-American heritage and customs. So please check out the website. There's a greater explanation that I can give in this short time, but I urge you to check it out one more time. Italian American Civil Rights League at IACRL.org. Check it out. This is the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Don't go away. We'll take more of your questions both on the phone and online when we return.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You're back in the Roger Stone Show. Here's a question from Earl in Charlotte, North Carolina. Earl says, I've heard you talk about meeting Frank Sinatra, but I've also heard you talk about the fact that you think Al Jolson was the greatest entertainer of all time. Why do you say this? Al Jolson was known as the world's greatest entertainer. He was Frank Sinatra before Frank Sinatra was Frank Sinatra. He was Elvis Presley before Presley was an international star. Al Jolson made the first talking movie. He had his first Broadway hit in 1917, and in 1950 he was Male Vocalist of the Year. He had a career that spanned movies, vaudeville, radio, and ultimately film. The famous song, Are You Lonesome Tonight, made most famous by Elvis Presley, is actually a cover of a song by Al Jolson. Listen to this compilation.
L-30B-0106.
Take 72.
I'll tell you what, let's try it one more time. If I crack, well...
Nice and soft because I don't know them.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight?
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight? Are you sorry we drifted apart?
Does your memory stray to a bright summer day when I kissed you and called you sweetheart?
Do the chairs in your parlor seem empty and bare?
Do you gaze at your doorstep and picture me there? Is your heart filled with pain?
Shall I come back again?
Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? Is your heart filled with pain?
Shall I come back again?
Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight?
That was, of course, Elvis Presley and the great Al Jolson. They never recorded together. That was a compilation, although the famous Presley hit was a cover of a song first recorded by the great Al Jolson. They never recorded together, but Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board, Old Blue Eyes, and Al Jolson did have a legendary song they did together at the Hollywood Bowl in 1946. And when we come back, we're going to roll that for you as well as take a few more of your questions. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, where we talk politics, news, history, culture, just like you heard, and also I'm going to give you my mother's recipe for chicken paprikash for those who are familiar with my Hungarian heritage. We'll be right back on the other side. I bet your mouth is already watering.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by KPMG. Making an impact is how KPMG helps make the difference. KPMG applies advanced tools and strategic thinking to convert data into actionable knowledge and deliver value by improving performance through transformation, modernizing processes with technology, harnessing the power of data, navigating complex M&A transactions, and enhancing trust among stakeholders. Go to kpmg.us/advisory to learn more. KPMG. Make the difference.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Recently, we asked some people about sharing their New York Times accounts.
My name is Dana. I am a subscriber to the New York Times, but my husband isn't. And it would be really nice to be able to share a recipe or an article or compete with him in Wordle or Connections. Thank you.
Dana, we heard you. Introducing the New York Times Family Subscription. One subscription, up to 4 separate logins for anyone in your life. Find out more at nytimes.com/family.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back, and we're taking your questions. You can go to 800-848-9222, or you can go to askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. That's askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. Here is a question from Janos from Cleveland. Janos says, I heard you read your mother's chicken paprikash recipe on the air, but I didn't have a pen and paper, so I missed it. So could you report it? Yes, I will give you that recipe in a few minutes. I'm going to give our listeners a chance to get a pen and paper so they can take it down so this doesn't happen again. So we'll be right back to the answer to your question. Here's another question from Angelo in Brooklyn. Angelo says, we have ranked choice voting here in New York, and I can't understand for the life of me how it works and if this is just another scam for Democrats to rig elections. Well, ranked choice voting is a scam, and people need to understand it. See, New York City uses ranked choice voting in primary and special elections over certain city-level offices, including mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and the city council. It allows rank up to 5 different candidates in order of your preference. So in other words, first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice, and fifth choice. In close elections where an individual doesn't win in a runaway, it goes to a runoff between the people in the first and second place. That allows second, third, and fourth place votes to then come into play. Those are added to a given candidate in the runoff from the percentages from other candidates on the ballot who are already eliminated. So a candidate with 20% points or less during the first vote, in other words, the real head-to-head vote, could lose if enough voters rank the loser as their second or third choice. This convoluted process has been used to undermine election integrity across the country. New York is now adopting it for local elections. Clearly, globalists like Soros plan to try to enact it statewide. It's already in wide use in Alaska. That's why Lisa Murkowski, who's never faced an actual election, she was first appointed to the Senate seat by her father, who resigned the seat to become governor of Alaska. And then she's won every election there since then, using this convoluted system. So to answer your question specifically, yes, ranked choice voting is a scam, and frankly, we need to get rid of it. All right, I'm going to give you my mother's recipe for the great Hungarian dish, a traditional dish called chicken paprikash. You're going to need about 2.5 pounds of chicken, disjointed. You're going to need a tablespoon of butter. You're going to need 1 large onion, chopped. You're going to need 1 tablespoon of real Hungarian paprika. You're going to need 1 cup of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 pint of sour cream, and 1 tablespoon of flour. Now, you saute the onion in the butter until golden, to the point of being translucent. Then you add the paprika, the chicken, the water, and the salt, and you simmer slowly for about an hour or until tender. Now, you do this on low heat. You don't want to boil it. You want to simmer it. Then, after the chicken is tender, you mix in the sour cream with the flour until it is all smooth. Then you add the chicken and heat throughout, but again, do not boil. That is your traditional chicken paprikash. You serve it over egg noodles. Some people serve it over dumplings. If I had a little more time, I'd give you the dumpling recipe as well, but it is one of the greatest of Hungarian dishes, and I strongly recommend it. All right, let's go to the phones. Elaine in Tennessee, you've been holding, and you have a question.
I'd like to ask, Charlie Kirk did not like a lot of security around him because he didn't want a barrier between he and his fans. Why in the world did they not utilize a drone? They would have seen that person laying on the roof, and perhaps this would never have happened.
It's an excellent question, Elaine. My good friend Jason Goodman over at Crowdsource the Truth has pointed out that there was a drone, could clearly be seen in videos. And what's not clear is who was operating the drone and for what purpose was it there. Obviously not for the purpose of providing security for Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk did have professional security, but as experts have pointed out to me, that kind of security, bodyguards, cannot protect you from a long-range shooter. We're asked to believe that a 22-year-old killed Charlie Kirk with 1 bullet, 1 shot to his, I guess it would have been his right carotid artery, where we know that the average life expectancy after being shot there is less than 3 minutes. So I made the case immediately that this looked to me like a professional hit. This looked to me like it was someone who was a skilled gunman. The fact that they escaped and had to later, only later, be apprehended is other indications to me that there's more than one person involved in what I think is a conspiracy. The whole thing continues to me to be troubling, and I don't think we have enough answers, but you raise an excellent question. It's the same question, by the way, that I posed about Butler, Pennsylvania. The local police in Butler offered the Secret Service twice to conduct a drone surveillance of the perimeter and the area of President Trump's campaign event, and the Secret Service said, no, we have it covered. And the problem with that, of course, is it turns out that they didn't have it covered. And when they went to use the drone technology that they had in mind, they had been completely untrained in its use. They ended up having to call the 800 service number for the company that manufactured and sold the drone to the Secret Service. Whether they ever did a drone surveillance is unknown. That's a question that's never been answered. The parallels between Butler, Pennsylvania, and this tragic political assassination of Charlie Kirk are very great. Again, in Butler, how is it possible that the Secret Service is aware of the fact that there is a man with a gun who's been seen with a rangefinder within the perimeter of President Trump's campaign event for 62 minutes, yet no one informs President Trump's immediate Secret Service detail, because if they had, based on the Secret Service manual, he would have been evacuated from the location immediately. Nonetheless, let him get up and speak. How is it that the state, local, and federal law enforcement are all on different radio frequencies, and therefore they cannot speak to each other?
Right, exactly.
The list of these questions, Elaine, just continues. How is it possible that the Secret Service's counter sharpshooter gets the man they tell us is the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, if it's even him, gets him in his sights, but doesn't immediately kill him, letting him get off 8 rounds before he finally shoots and kills him, and then only after a sheriff's deputy shoots first and knocks him back. How could any of this be? So I think the answer is we don't know. I'd like to know more. I'm going to keep asking questions. They want to wrap this up very quickly. You can see that. But thanks to good citizens like you, Elaine, asking questions, we're not going to be satisfied until we learn the truth.
I have one more thing I wanted
Sure.
to say.
Go.
Earlier, one of the hosts said that they went to their Catholic Mass today, and he asked the priest, "Why did you not mention Charlie Kirk?" And the priest looked at him, with a sideways glance. Now, today I went to Mass, and my pastor spoke of Charlie Kirk, and it made me very happy.
I thank you for that. I also, when I went to church with my wife this morning, there was extensive discussion by our very dynamic pastor, Rob Pacenza, extensively about the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk and the fact that, well, God has a plan, and sometimes his plan is hard to decipher, but this was meant to be. There is some larger purpose here. For those who thought they were silencing Charlie Kirk, they have only made his voice much, much louder and more powerful. And you see this outpouring around the world. It is really heartening and extraordinary. And Charlie Kirk will go down in history as someone who has made a difference. One of the things that impresses me the most, Elaine, is that the number of parents and grandparents who've told me that their children, high school age children, college age children, are now awake. If they didn't know who Charlie Kirk was before, they now know who he was. Many of them already knew who he was and had already enlisted, not only as followers of Jesus Christ, but also believers in the U.S. Constitution, capitalism, free enterprise, free expression, free speech. And those are the things that Charlie Kirk will be remembered for. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Judith in Brooklyn, you've been waiting a long time. I apologize. You have a question for us.
Great show, great show. Before I have a question, I have a comment. And also, I heard someone tell me down here there are no answers, but up there there are no questions. And there are so many questions down here, let me tell you, Roger. And you keep asking questions because you're terrific and I appreciate you, and everyone else does too. My comment, and then I have a question, is think about this. Republicans use guns as a defensive, protective weapon, but Democrats use guns as an assault weapon. And they're the ones that turn to violence and even turn to killing. And that is, that's what statistics point to this as well. So I found that interesting. They're always ramming down our throats, Republicans. We're the ones with the guns, whatever. But meanwhile, we only use them to defend ourselves. But they're the ones over and over, where you see how they actually use them for violence and for killing. So the other thing is, I want to ask you, Roger, then I'll hang up. You said something early in the show about a book that was published, Killing Charlie Kirk. And did you say it was published before? When was this done?
Amazon lists it for sale on September 9th. It's been screenshotted. It's now been changed to September 10th, but it was originally posted on September 9th. It's by a woman named Anastasia J. Casey. Now, when this was posted online on X, somebody posted a community note, I know this to be true, that says your publication date and your release date are not necessarily the same. That's true because it came to play in my own trial. I published a book about the Mueller witch hunt prior to the judge putting a gag order on me. I had to prove to the judge that it had just been published just prior to the gag order being placed on me. She wanted to put me in jail because I published a book critical of Robert Mueller. Of course, I turned out to be absolutely right about all of that, as the documents declassified by Tulsi Gabbard proved the Russian collusion hoax was the greatest single abuse of power in American history. It was nothing less than an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the incredible capabilities of our intelligence agencies were used to try to unseat the improbable but duly elected winner of the 2016 election, Donald J. Trump. To your point, Judith, and I think this is a key point, where are the riots today? where's the mass carnage? In the wake of the death of George Floyd, the cities were on fire. Millions of dollars of personal and government property was destroyed. Thousands were injured. Many were killed. Yet in the wake of Charlie Kirk's brutal murder, there are no violent demonstrations today. There are no public burnings. There is no violence. What you have is prayer and prayer vigils and peaceful marches around the globe and around the country, proving your point exactly. Thank you so much for your call. Thanks, folks. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. And when we come back, we fortunately have a time for a few more of your questions. Again, go to 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222, or you can email us a question at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial or stay on us here on the Internet. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Here is a question we got by email. This is from Doug in Alexandria, Virginia. Doug says, Roger, I knew you when you were a lobbyist here in Washington. Back in the 80s, you drove a really weird car. What was that? You are referring, in this case, to a Citroen DS. I actually had a DS-21. It was a 1972 model. They would later stop selling this car in the United States once the EPA put in place the catalytic converters. The French refused to strangle their engine, as they put it. This car was launched in 1955. You would know it if you saw it. It was known for its extremely innovative design and its technology. The last one, I think, was built in 1975, actually. It was a front-drive car with a futuristic aerodynamic look, was often called the Goddess. It was the first car with hydropneumatic suspension, so it worked in a groundbreaking kind of self-leveling suspension system, which offered a very smooth ride and an adjustable ground clearance. It actually had a fluid reservoir, so the car drove on these liquid shocks, which meant you had to be both a mechanic and a plumber to actually keep the car running. It had this sleek aerodynamic body, was designed by Flaminio Bertoni, which had a very distinctive shape with a low profile, a tapered rear, and kind of these minimal overhangs. The car would actually, when you turned it on, it would rise, and when you just turned it off, it would lower. The DS boasted advanced features like power steering, disc brakes, semi-automatic transmission. It was the coolest car I ever owned. I had two of them, actually. I also owned the station wagon, which was called the Break. If you saw the movie Scarface, and you remember the scene in which they're supposed to make a car explode with a car bomb, but Pacino refuses, that was a white Citroen DS-21, exactly like the one that I had. Excellent question. You can still buy them today. The problem is, despite the fact that there are many of them, there were over 1.4 million of them, I believe, produced. You can still find them in France. They're also over Asia and Indochina, because the French, of course, had a very substantial presence in that part of the world. But today, to find a mechanic who can work on such a car is extraordinarily difficult. They tend to either be Vietnamese or Korean. Parts are still available because there's a very active collector market. I would like to own one of these again, but it is completely and totally unrealistic. I think it would be virtually impossible to keep on the road. You can find them by going to, Hemmings or any of the huge auto listers. They're not that expensive, but for collectors or those who are aficionados, the fact that service on them is very hard to get makes it all the more difficult. But I do thank you, Doug, for your question. Here's my final question for the day. It comes from Alma, who says she's from Hawaii, and she says, who will be the Democrat nominee for President of the United States in 2028, pardon me. Well, in politics, a week is a lifetime. They don't have much of a bench, I must say. What does it take to get nominated? It takes an enormous amount of money, and it takes name ID, but it also, obviously in their party, where they nominated Kamala Harris with no contest whatsoever. They never had any convention other than to ratify the fact that there was one nominee. So the party that whines constantly about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy nominated their candidate for president in a completely non-democratic process in which no primary voter or no caucus voter had any impact to who their nominee was. And the guy who was their nominee, a guy who got millions of votes in the primaries and caucuses, Joe Biden, got dumped like a sack of potatoes. So I don't know. It's a little early. Gavin Newsom has the money in the name ID. J.B. Pritzker, I can't believe that guy's serious. This past week, his family was finally tied to Epstein in the documents released by the House Oversight Committee. I think he's going exactly nowhere. I'll be watching the Democrat contest very closely, but it's very, very early. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Roger Stone Show today. Until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?